Wriggles clear. Might just get the chip, and he does. He's scored. Oh, what a great goal! He's done it. Oh, brilliant play. Wiggling his way. That's an excellent ball. And Ziggy. It's a goal. Forward for Clydebank. Excellent play by Hughes. I think the player of the match, and sweetly finished by Terry.
And this week, our special guest is a sports writer with the Courier in Dundee. Welcome, Eric Nicolson. Thank you for joining us.
How are we doing? Glad to be there, Andy. Tom.
Thanks for coming on, Eric.
True to form, we've picked out a Shoot magazine. The magazine that we've picked out Shoot from the 18th of March 1989. So as we do, we'll start from the front cover, and it shows an action shot from an Everton versus Wimbledon game. The Everton player, Pat van de Hout, has his eyes fixed firmly on a high ball that he's rising up to win. Watching the ball is John Fashanu of Wimbledon, and he's similarly transfixed by the ball, but Pat looks as though he might be the one that's actually going to win. I think he looks as though he wants to win that more, doesn't he? What do you reckon?
I tell you what, it's a brave man that takes his eyes off John Fashanu when he's going up for the ball, to be fair, isn't it? You could have a good spot the ball competition on that one, because if I was Pat van den Hout, I would be looking at the man rather than the ball there, just to protect myself.
To be fair, he was no circumviolent himself, was he?
No, he wasn't.
He didn't mind going in for a challenge like that. But so Everton are kitted out in an all yellow Umbro kit with some blue bits around the collar, cuffs and top of the socks. It looks like Pat is wearing some compression shorts underneath as well, and that was really, really new, I suppose, at the time, if not even unheard of. So he must have been one of the first to do that. His boots are Adidas. Yeah, I can't quite make out which style they are. Anybody got any thoughts on whether they're just World Cups or something like that?
No, I'm not a boot expert, I must admit.
Let me see if I can zoom in a wee bit. I think I've got
I was a Puma King man.
There we go. So I don't know if they're maybe. Yeah, they sort of just look. They look like the ones. I think they've got red around the white stripes as well, so maybe round about.
Is there a wee autograph on the tongue there, or is it just mud?
Mm-hmm. I think that, yeah, it might just be mud, but I'm wondering, with it being 1989, maybe it was the Italian World Cup boots coming up, maybe. That could have been what was going on there. And the Fash is wearing a blue Hummel kit with yellow chevrons down the arms and shorts. There's yellow piping down the join between the body and arms, and I don't know, what do you call that bit? What's that bit called? The piping that goes down that way.
Oh, across the shoulder.
Yeah.
There's a question I wasn't expecting to get asked. I must admit. Piping across the shoulder we'll have to do, I think.
Shoulder piping. Let's go with shoulder piping. Okay.
Shoulder pipe.
Yeah. But the thing I noticed about Fash there is he's wearing a sweatband.
A sweatband.
Which was all the rage back then, and it's the same colour as the kit as well, yellow and purple. And yeah, I like sweatbands. I think that's certainly something from the period. The sponsors are NEC for Everton and Carlsberg for Wimbledon. And the main heading on the front cover in relation to the game reads, "Cup of Fears, Dawn's Warning," and the accompanying text with the photo says, "Everton and Wimbledon clash in the Big TV Cup cracker." Okay, so other things to note on the front page, it's 45 pence, and it says first on sale with the winning lineup. There's also Liverpool meet the Lunatic, and this is relation to Brentford goalie Tony Park, who they will meet in the FA Cup. Greedy Clough, we can do the hat-trick. Brian Clough talks about the Forest's chance in the Cup, and they have to take on Man United first. Italia 90 is mentioned with the latest colour action inside from recent qualifying games involving the home nations. There's also an 8-page Scottish Cup special. A photo is of Chris Woods, and it's shown along with the text, "Chris out of the woods." And lastly, there are team group photos for Brentford and St Johnstone. Anybody want to pick anything out from the front page here? There's a lot going on, isn't there?
I know, you're right with the sweatbands. That's how I remember Fashion it. And was it, you'd get the odd headband as well in that Wimbledon team, wouldn't you? Laurie Sanchez, wasn't it? Did he not wear the headband a couple of times?
I don't know. The only one I can remember was Brighton.
Steve Foster.
Steve Foster.
Steve Foster.
He was definitely one of those.
And I think he was a socks round the ankles man as well, wasn't he? Fashion.
Aye. Well, you can see there that there's certainly no socks showing up the shins there. Okay, and Tom, do you want to pick anything out? Are you okay?
I quite like the strips. It's a nice away strip. Everton, that all yellow. There's good contrast there with the Wimbledon's sort of blue and yellow and the all yellow.
I think, yeah, just so you mentioned that, do you think that would happen nowadays with the yellow on both strips, that they would get away with that, or do you think they'd wear like the fifth strip or something?
There's not that much on Wimbledon's kit. I think that would be all right.
Yeah,
Well, Kilmarnock Dundee the other day, they got away with blue v blue, didn't they?
Is that right? Oh, I like to see that.
I saw, and St Johnstone played Ross County this season, and that was another one that was different shades of blue against each other. So I don't know if they've relaxed the rules up here or what, but there's a couple, with you would never get that down south, would you? You'd never get blue v blue.
Oh no. And keep pointing out when there's old photographs of Hibs versus Celtic, and both of them were wearing green and white, and it's just it looks good, and it's like that's gone now because of this kit thing. So I'm a big fan of just getting on with it. Whatever you're wearing, get on with it. Okay, let's have a look inside, and we're on pages 2 and 3, and Warring Dons in a league of their own. We have a couple of articles here. First one: Everton can forget Wembley if they get involved in a scrap, says Peter Reid. Peter Reid's at QPR. He says, if Everton go to war with Wimbledon in their FA Cup quarter-final, they can forget all about going to Wembley, for it comes down to pure power and aggression. My former teammates aren't in the same league as the cup holders. Vinnie Jones has been sent off in his previous 2 visits to Goodison Park, but Reid doesn't think that there will be any controversial incidents. Everton must not allow themselves to be dragged into a scrap. Reid thinks that the game will depend on Graham Sharp and Trevor Steven, as they can carve open any defence if they are in top form. On Wimbledon's style of play, Reid says, their style was not my cup of tea, but if they play to their strengths and have developed a system which makes them one of the most difficult teams to beat in the country. Reid picks out Dennis Wise and John Fashanu from the Wimbledon team as being danger men. The main photo shows Everton's Stuart McCall in action against Laurie Sanchez of Wimbledon. Laurie has gone to the ground, but looks to have won the ball from McCall. The kits are I think it's from the same game as the front page, isn't it? Now, just as a wee spoiler, Everton would go on to win 1-0 with a goal in the first half from Pat Nevin. If we move on to pages 4 and 5, we have the Liverpool versus Brentford preview. So the heading here, it's got a photograph of Tony Parks, and the heading, I was a lunatic, says Brentford's Tony Parks. Brentford keeper Tony Parks is back in the spotlight, which turned him into a lunatic 5 years ago. He was Spurs' hero the night they won the UEFA Cup in a dramatic penalty shootout against Anderlecht in 1984. But the 26-year-old admits that instant fame pushed him to breaking point, and only now can he look back with any degree of perspective on the crazy days that followed. He recalls, people were coming up to me in the clubs and patting me on the back when the going got tough. A few months later, they were nowhere to be seen. I was a bit of a lunatic back then. I became big-headed and was going out to nightclubs until 2 or 3 in the morning. My reputation as a bad boy, plus a drink driving charge, made managers wary when I wanted to leave Spurs. Brentford boss Steve Perryman had faith in him and has helped him shake off his image. Parks gives some advice to youngsters to be careful who you associate with when things are going well. Now, Brentford meet Liverpool in the 6th round, which is the quarter-final of the FA Cup, and Parks, who celebrated the previous round win over Blackburn with a forward somersault, says, if Brentford win at Anfield, you'll see something special, more than just a forward somersault. So just as a wee spoiler, they got beat 4-0, so he didn't have to do anything like that. So he played at Falkirk for 4 seasons between 92 and 96. He played a total of 112 league games, and he's only 5'10", which, you know, nowadays, again, you just think they wouldn't make a grade because of his height these days. But yeah, there's a few things to pick out there, I think. And, you know, and we speak about this all the time, Tom, about how honest some of the interviews are in here. Yeah. You know, really open, and he's talking about a drink driving charge, and you would, you know, the players nowadays wouldn't necessarily offer that up in an interview. So I just found that really, you know, quite enlightening, and, you know, a sign of the times that it's changed so much. I mean, with yourself, you know, Eric, I mean, you must interview quite a lot of footballers and managers and people in the game, and I'm guessing in the main you just get the stock replies, or a lot
of the time, yeah. Particularly, well, we're in this year of Zoom, which makes it even harder, you know, and it's not the easiest, but yeah, I think, I mean, it's amazing that that Shoot would get something like that first. I'm presuming he's never, if say for example this is the first time he's spoken about it, you know, it's for predominantly a kids magazine, you know, to suddenly come out and, you know, put your hands up to being a clubber. Mind you, I don't think that the 3 a.m. bit's a bit unnecessary, because if you go to a nightclub, you're going to stay at the end. You're not going to get any brownie points for leaving at 1, are you?
No,
you know, no. Well been hung for a sheep as a lamb, but no, I mean he's obviously decided whether. Listen, they probably wouldn't even have had to go through the club in those days. You know, I mean, there would have been a guy. I don't know if you'll know better than me. I think were the staff writers that Shoot had. They probably would have been with the freelancers. I mean, they would have just had. Somebody would have given him Tony Parks' number. They'd have phoned him up at his house, and he'd have just spoken to them. It would have been as simple as that. It would have been. I mean, you know, we're talking 1989, so we're not talking millions of years ago. But it has changed beyond description. And I bet you, what would Brentford would have been in probably the old 3rd division, were they, or the old 2nd division? But either way, you know, you would just, unless you had a manager that liked to control things, which would have been possible, you're going to come on to Brian Clough later on, but most managers would have just said, yeah, on you go, phone. They would have probably given out the number themselves, and I bet you he wouldn't have thought to... I think just footballers were just more honest then, weren't they? They wouldn't have thought that would have been an issue. And I mean, I bet you that wouldn't have even been picked up by nowadays. If somebody said that in a magazine, obviously it wouldn't be Shoot. But if they said it in, you know, one of the big sort of European magazines, or you know, whatever, 442 or all that stuff, that would be ripped off, stuck in the tabs, and away it went, social media, all the rest of it. That one. Would folk have even talked about it in the playground or that? Probably wouldn't have done, would they?
That's a good point. There was the podcast with Joey Barton was on. Callum, yeah. And he interviewed Joey Barton, and the papers are just... I think one of them may have contacted him, but other ones just ripped everything out of it and ran with days worth of stories. And you think nowadays with that on the page there, that would probably be treated to the same sort of thing. But I guess players didn't expect that they were going to get stitched up.
No.
Back then, as much. I mean, I'm sure they did.
No, because I mean, I'm trying to look at his headline there, Brentford keyword. His back in this blog has turned him into a lunatic. I mean, well, you probably wouldn't say that nowadays, right enough, you know. But it's it's of its time. But you know, it wouldn't have shocked you if they kind of shied away from the sort of tabloidy stuff and buried it halfway down. You know, I bet you've seen that in a few of the shoots. You know, the actual really good newsline is like buried 8-9 pars down, and they've gone with a real sort of football-y intro. But that one, they've gone with the good stuff.
Yeah, fair. Does anybody recall him much playing up at?
Yeah, I mean, from Spurs more than Falkirk, I must admit.
Yeah,
just that era, wasn't it?
Yeah, I recall that UEFA Cup final.
Yeah.
That second leg, which you can find that whole game on YouTube. But that's what I remember him for until I came up to Falkirk.
So I mean, I've looked at his stats: 37 league games for Spurs, 71 for Brentford, and 112 for Falkirk. A few other teams. So Falkirk was the team that he was at.
Yeah, I'm presuming that he would have been the Simon Stainrod era, presumably, was it?
Yeah, I think he came up with Richard Cadet as well, was it?
Yeah.
He came up.
He was at Brentford as well.
Yeah, there's a team photo later on of Brentford, and both of them are in there, so we can discuss that a little bit then.
And by the way, Andy, just to remind you, he has said he would do this podcast, Tony Parks.
Aye, that's right. Yep.
Oh, well, you'll maybe get another exclusive, maybe back in the nightclubs.
We'll just use the same magazine. We've done the work. Okay, so let's move on to pages 6 and 7, and we've got Greedy Clough. So this is previewing Man United versus Nottingham Forest. And Brian Clough talks about the Man United and Nottingham Forest Cup game, which, due to the Everton game being selected by BBC TV for the live game, means that he'll be able to enjoy his Sunday roast as usual. He looks back at the league game between the two in December, which United won 2-0. Clough was annoyed at the result, but didn't think they played badly. In fact, he says United were fired up with Brian Robson showing that he's still the best midfielder in the country. Forest are already in the C-Mod Cup and Littlewoods Cup finals, but Clough doesn't mind being greedy. Does anybody want to have a wee a wee chat about Brian Clough?
Well, I thought, I don't know, have we gone past, when I looked at the magazine, there was the wee editorial on would it be on the front page? And I just loved how it was like the editor was basically bragging the fact that Clough would speak to them but wasn't speaking to the press. And I thought that was incredible. And he was, I can't remember how he phrased it, Andy, but it was basically along the lines of, it's our duty to, and we're doing our bit, and if he wants to speak to us, but Forest fans need to hear type thing. Basically putting two fingers up to the newspapers and, here he is, Brian Clough speaking to Shoot magazine and not speaking to the papers. So I'm sure there was a good reason for a fallout and it would have probably blown over, but there you go.
Yeah, I missed that. So it says, Shoot is proud of our association with Cloughie and the facts we are one of the few publications he will talk to. I do not know his reasons for gagging the Forest players from giving TV interviews.
But he does. He does.
But I do feel the viewers deserve to hear comments from players and managers, providing the questions relate to the game. So do the TV companies and sponsors who pour millions into the football and help keep it solvent. So I suppose he's proud of that, but I think he's sort of given him a wee bit of a ticking off as well for not allowing his players to do that. So yeah, best of both worlds with that. Okay, let's on the same page we have Milne's revenge mission.
Oh yeah, we'll have to talk about Ralph.
Yeah, so former Bristol City ace Ralph Milne plans a revenge mission on behalf of his former teammates on Saturday. Forest knocked out City in the Littlewoods Cup semi-final last season, and Milne says, "I hardly need an incentive. A place in the last four is ample enough, but I hope to gain revenge on Forest for the City lads." So Milne praises City boss Joe Jordan for putting the spark back into his game, saying, "Joe was great to work with and I'll never forget his help." Milne is having to deal with snipes from people, including ex-United manager Tommy Docherty, who declared that when you pay peanuts for a player, you end up with a monkey. Then, while commenting on radio, he said, "It puzzles me why Alex Ferguson bought Milne." Seconds later, Milne beat two players and crossed a perfect ball for Brian McLean to score. A perfect response. Just as a spoiler, Forest kept alive their hopes of a domestic treble of cups with a 1-0 win over United. So let's talk about Ralphie.
There's so many things that Ralph Milne, from our part of the world, he was an absolute god for Dundee United fans for that goal that won them the league at Dens and just general. I think if you were to pick a top five United players of all time, I think United would have Ralph Milne, possibly even in the top three after possibly been third after Sturrock and Neary. He was an absolute legend and what a player. And I think he should have had bucket loads of Scotland caps, but he was one of the ones that McLean couldn't quite tame. And I think it's just the difference between, and he's top polls, isn't he, of being United's worst ever, Man United's worst ever signing and stuff like that. But I don't even think, it's a shame it doesn't give his age there, but folk think when he signed for Man United that he would have been like 36, 37. I think he might even have been, if it wasn't late 20s, it was early 30s. And, it wasn't, he certainly shouldn't have been washed up. And it kind of speaks to, I think it's fascinating how Fergie yet did not have the trust of fans and journalists, because fast forward a few years and you wouldn't, what's the phrase, that you wouldn't have journalists shuffling uncomfortably or whatever it was. People would just say, if Fergie signed somebody, that's, he's for us. And obviously fans were a bit sceptical as well, so listen, it didn't work out. 150 grand wasn't it wasn't the biggest gamble ever, but Fergie remembered Ralph Milne, the player at Aberdeen, used to play against United all the time, and which wasn't that long ago. And I think, come on, United have had far worse players than Ralph Milne, that have been signed. But so I'd like to think if they were doing polls nowadays, he wouldn't be top of them. But it just kind of and Tommy Dock chipping in as well, criticising Fergie. It just kind of speaks to a time where he still had to prove himself, obviously.
Yeah.
You're right, Eric. He was 27 when he
27.
signed.
Well, there you go. He should have still been short of his peak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And another wee nugget we found out when when Steve McLaren was being linked, well, he was more than linked when he was in the running for the Dundee United job this time last year or whenever it was, and out popped his the most unlikely friendship in football. Apparently, Steve McLaren and Ralph Milne were best mates when they were at Bristol, and unlike, like I say, and unless Steve McLaren was a wild child that he managed to keep a hidden all those years, you really wouldn't put him down as a drinking buddy of Ralph Milne. But there we go. Yeah. It's a shame the great man isn't around to ask the questions, but Ralph burned the candle at both ends, and well, maybe Steve did while he was at Bristol, you know.
Yeah, I seem to. Okay, Man United. I mean, he never played much for Charlton or Bristol, but he seems to be well thought of by those fans. Mm-hmm. From my experience, anyway, I don't really hear a bad word said about him from those teams, even though it was quite a short spell. So it must have made a good impression there.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, United fans just absolutely adored him. You know, I mean, where did he go after United? I can't remember.
West Ham, United and loan. I don't know if he played. And then he went to, I guess, Japan or China.
He was really on the drift by then, wasn't he?
Yeah. 3 Scotland under 21 caps, but yeah, you know, as you say, he could quite easily have got one or more national caps. Really, couldn't have. Okay, let's move on to pages 8 and 9. So we're on the shoot stats, results, goal scorers, lineups, and ratings. So this is the games that have been on the previous week or so. So the first one, before we look at the results, we're going to look at On Your Marks, and it's Shoot Adidas Golden Shoe Awards for 1988-89. And Frank McAvenny's relegation to Celtic's reserves allowed Parkhead pal Mark McGee to move ahead in Scotland's race to win the Golden Shoe.
Oh, what was that for? What was he? What did the bad boy? What did Frank do to get himself into the reserves? He must have been in the nightclubs with Tony Parks, was he?
Any ideas, Tom?
No, but a good guess, I would say.
Yeah. So McGee is on 13, while McAvenny and Nicholas are both on 12. In England, Division 1 leader is Alan Smith on 19. Division 2 leader is Tommy Tynan of Plymouth on 21. Division 3 leader is Steve Bull of Wolves on 26. And Division 4 leader is Phil Stant of Hereford on 22.
Look at the names in Division 2 there, eh? Some proper club legends there. Tommy Tynan, Mark Bright, Kerry Dixon, Ian Wright and Gordon. I mean, they're all stellar players at their clubs. Maybe less Jury, I suppose. But no, he was well thought of, Jury. But, you know, a few of those there.
Internationalists as well. All the names.
Steve Bull in Division 3. And Brian Dean, club legend as well.
Yeah. Bobby Williamson, Division 4 there with Rotherham as well. Yeah. So just as a wee spoiler, Alan Smith would top the First Division with 23 goals. Keith Edwards of Hull finished top with 26. He was a goal behind Tommy Tynan in the magazine at the time of this. Steve Bull finished top with 37 and 50 in total in all competitions that season. And Phil Stant finished top on 28. That means Steve Bull scored 11 goals in the last 15 games of this season. In Scotland, both McGee and Nicholas finished on 16 goals each. Now, just about goal scoring, when I look back at the old magazines, the 60s, early 70s and stuff, it's like you've got loads and loads of players who are in their score 40 goals and stuff like that. And I remember there was a period, I don't know if it was round about this sort of time, where, you know, players were struggling to get out 20 goals for a season. And I don't know why that happened. Any thoughts? Why the goals dried up?
Football did get more defensive for a while, didn't it? With the Italian influence spread across. I just think it could well be that.
Yeah.
Could well be that.
Yeah. I can't think of any rule changes that would have made things more difficult for that, because the runabout here would have been, I guess the pass back rule would have been round about this time as well.
Yeah. Steve Bull must have been. That's getting close to his goal against Scotland, isn't it? Because that was before Italia 90, wasn't it, when he scored at Hampden? So presumably, and he wasn't a Division 3 player, so Wolves must have gone up, and then he gets his call up.
Okay, so let's look at some of the games that are going on. So we've got European Under-21 Championship on Tuesday, March the 7th, and Scotland 2, France 3. It's goals from Wright and Galloway for Scotland, and 2 from Diver, and 1 from Zitelli, David Zitelli, who would go on to play 50 league games for Hibs between 2000 and 2002. I always like to see when you've got youth team results or under 21s and that, and just see the names coming through that, either didn't make it or, went on to really...
That'll be Stephen Wright, presumably, yeah?
Yeah, Aberdeen at the time, he would have been, yeah.
Yeah, he's at Dundee now, he's at Dundee's academy.
Right.
Good guy, Stephen Wright.
Okay, next one going to look at is the World Cup qualifiers, and this is Wednesday, so this is the day after, Wednesday 8th of March. Albania 0, England 2, and Barnes and Robson with the goals. Scotland 2, France 0. I was just about to say there, for those sort of results, but every time we beat France all the time, don't we? So that's nothing unusual there. 2 goals from Mo Johnson in front of 65,000. Steve Nichols, Scotland's top man, with a shoot rating of 9. That's pretty good going. Frank Soze in there. I think there's a photograph later on where Frank Soze, it shows some pictures from this game, and Frank Soze's shown there as well.
Try to figure out there, Andy, where Steve Nicholl would have played that night, because it must have been right back, but you've got Gough, McLeish and Gillespie, and he wouldn't have played 3, would he? So could he have played Nicholl in midfield?
Yeah, I think so.
Or maybe Aitken in midfield.
Yeah,
maybe
possibly.
Aitken, but...
To be honest, I think, it was a time where you do see team photographs of Scotland, and you look, and 7 out of 11 are what you would class as defenders. But, like some McLeish, I guess, started as a midfielder as well. Aitken went into midfield, or, would play there fine. So, as you say, I don't think we played 5 along the back then. Certainly not to beat France 2-0. Only a 6 for Paul McStay. Who else is in there? Strachan came on as a sub. Ferguson, which I assume Ian Ferguson that'll be. Would it have been Ian Ferguson? Mo Johnson, Ali McCoy, Paul McStay, Gary Gillespie.
Bit early for Ian Ferguson, isn't it?
Unless it's the Dundee United's Ian Ferguson, maybe? Dundee United
He wouldn't have been starting. Try to think, when was...
It might have been, actually, because round about this is when St Mirren won the cup.
When was the St Mirren United Cup final? I should know that one off by heart.
87.
Oh yeah, well beating Ferguson then, yeah.
Again, that whole game's on YouTube.
So let's look at some of the Scottish Premier results. Saturday the 11th of March, Aberdeen 2, Dundee 0. Dundee United 1, St Mirren 4. A Hegarty own goal in the first minute. The writing was on the wall of that game, I think. Hearts 0, Celtic 1, Motherwell 0, Hibs 0, Rangers 3, Hamilton 0. And a couple from the Scottish First Division. Meadowbank 1, Clydebank 1. And St Johnstone 0, Morton 1. Bankies and St Johnstone were still close enough around the promotion spot at this stage, although Saints would only pick up another 7 points in the remainder of the season, while the Bankies finished in 3rd place, 4 points behind Falkirk. Any of the results of the players, the goal scorers, anything we want to pick out from those?
That Aberdeen team, I mean, it is fun because I was writing a lot about it in the week before the Scottish Cup final, because of course that was about the time when the last 89-90 was the last of the doubles for a non-Old Firm team, and you can see it's still big Fergie influence in that team, isn't there? And the ones that have been brought in, they're not exactly pale imitations, are they either? It's still a stellar lineup.
Okay, let's have a wee look at the leagues there. So, as I was just saying, St Johnstone, Clydebank both up the top half of the table, but realistically at that point, I mean, Clydebank probably still harbouring hopes at that point, but it wasn't to be.
I think it was just 1 up, was it? Can't remember that for, but I'm
not quite sure actually.
They wouldn't have had 2 dropping out of a 10-team league.
Yeah.
Aye.
So Cowdenbeath 2 points deducted for a breach of rules. I wonder what that could be. Okay, so let's have a wee move on, and we're going to look at pages 10 and 11, and it's West Ham versus Norwich preview. And it says, you can keep your medals. First Division survival more important than Wembley, says Alan Devonshire. Alan Devonshire realises this season's FA Cup final is probably his last chance of glory with West Ham, but he'd be willing to swap a Cup Winners' medal for a guaranteed 17th place in the First Division, which would mean First Division survival. Devonshire believes that West Ham have been able to progress in this season's cup competitions as there has been less pressure on them given their form this season, with Norwich City, who they meet in the 5th round, being favourites to win the game. Devonshire picks out Brian Gunn from the City side, saying, "Brian is now more consistent than Jim Leighton and deserves his chance in the Scotland team. His performance has certainly silenced the critics." There's another short story on goalkeeper Phil Parkes, who's just been recalled for only his second first team game in 2 years in the previous round tie against Charlton. He's already helped West Ham beat Norwich twice this season, but this was in the reserves. So I guess towards the end of Alan Devonshire's, you probably think he's from an era before this, so it must be right at the end of his career.
I liked him as a player. I think, I was brought up down south. In fact, we would be back in Scotland by then. But the first FA Cup final I remember was the Man U Arsenal one, the famous one that Alan Sunderland won. But I think the first one that I watched the whole way through would have been West Ham Arsenal. So I've always got a wee soft spot for that West Ham team. And you're right, that would have been his peak. So what was that? That was about 80-81, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was 1980.
So, and yeah, he was a very good. But I think he got capped, didn't he, Alan Devonshire? I'm sure he did.
I can't remember, but I think did he not have quite a lot of really bad injuries? I think, if I remember right, there was a few really bad injuries.
84, 85, he never played in the league at all for West Ham, and 87, 88, he only played once.
Yeah, I think maybe he was really badly injured, came back, and then got injured again pretty quickly. Because we've discussed him a few times in previous ones.
Well, they were a team you think of like that whole decade. I wouldn't be surprised if there was 3 promotions and relegations, because they had some real highs when you thought, like the cup win obviously, and then the McAvenny season when there was a TV strike and they ran Liverpool close. But in between times, they were yo-yoing, there was no doubt about it. But good players, eh? Yeah,
absolutely. So on the same page, just a little bit about, it says, "Canary bubble won't burst," vows Malcolm Allen. Malcolm Allen, who's just turned 22 and has already scored 5 goals in the FA Cup this season for Norwich City, is confident of making a happy return to Villa Park, the ground where he launched his senior career while with Watford. Now, I never actually... Tom, do you have any idea what the result of that was?
It was a draw, and then I think Norwich won 3-1 in the replay.
Okay, so moving on to pages 12 and 13. So this is the Italia 90 qualifiers. So first off, we're going to look at Albania versus England. And this is a 2-page spread with some photographs and a little article. And the heading is, "Robson the Lionheart. Bryan and Barnes save England again." Now, short look at England's recent World Cup qualifier against Albania that took them to the top of their group with a 2-0 win with goals by John Barnes and Brian Robson. They sit joint top with Sweden after only 2 games played. There are 4 very colourful action photos from the game, 2 of which show John Barnes firing in the opening goal, and the other has skipper Brian Robson rising above the Albanian defence to bullet home with a header. David Rocastle is pictured chasing a ball while Gary Lineker fires a shot off target. Something mentioned in the article that the England strikers haven't scored since last May. It's just, it seems to be, it's only 2 games played, and I guess it's just a feeling of negativity that maybe they only scored 2 against Albania. I don't know. Maybe that's just something that I remember from the time that...
No, you're definitely right. It definitely hung over them, didn't it? Until, I think, until Italia 90, they weren't having Bobby Robson, were they, at all? They were terrible at the Euros, weren't they, in 88? They lost every game, didn't they? Ireland, the Soviet Union and the Dutch. So I think most England fans wanted him out there and then, didn't they? And then so he's got this other campaign. They're top of the group. Well, only played 2 games.
2 games. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think even going into Italia 90, weren't they? There wasn't a wave of euphoria carrying England there, was there?
No, I don't remember that. You know, it's sort of. I think that the first game was against the Republic. The first game, Italia 90, and it was a 0-0 draw, and
one each.
Was it one each? Sorry, yeah. And the group stages were pretty boring and lack of goals.
And they should have gone out to Belgium. Should have beaten them, and then they got lucky with Cameroon, didn't they, as well? But yeah.
But I guess that's all. It just needs that little bit of luck, that little. As Glenn Hoddle might say, a little bit of magic, you know, and suddenly England's the whole psyche around the team just switched, didn't it?
But I did a piece with, when was it? A good few months ago now, with Sergei Baltacha, and he gave some great lines, but one of them was that Bobby Robson, because when Sergei obviously came to Ipswich before he came to St Johnstone, and he was the first guy for the Soviet Union to come and play in Britain. And obviously Bobby Robson, he's still lived in Ipswich, and he got in touch with Sergei Baltacha and basically asked him, he was wanting to go to the sweeper, which they did in Italia 90, and he was looking for advice. And Sergei mentioned a game that Soviet Union had played against England in Wembley, and how basically Soviet Union had played them off the park type thing. And it was just, I can't remember the date, but it was basically they played them, and then they went out to that famous game in Brazil where John Barnes scored the amazing goal, and it was from that game that left the impression basically on Robson that Baltacha was the sort of main man, and he was the man to ask type thing. And the thing, I went back to watch it, and I included the link in my piece, and I referenced it in the piece as well. The fact that the full time booing for Robson was unbelievable, and it wasn't just booing; it was they were singing to get him rid, and it was in about three different chants. It was absolutely. I mean, you wouldn't hear it now. You really wouldn't hear it now. Like if fans turn against, they boo or they leave early. But this was proper. Get rid of Bobby, and yeah. So I mean, folk think, don't they? They think Bobby Robson, when he was a great manager, but they think, England fans loved him, but couldn't have been further from the truth.
I think that happens a lot of time. I mean, just look at Fergie. I mean, it wasn't all plain sailing, and if some fans had their way, would have been gone, and look what they would have missed. But I guess it's a fickle nature of fans, isn't it? It really is. Okay, so moving on from this, we're moving on to Irwin at large. So this is a number of little stories across the pane. There's a few that I'm going to pick out here, and the first one is talent scouts flock to Alloa. As they do, the talent scouts have been flocking north to Alloa to check on some of the young talent currently on show with the Scottish Second Division part-timers. Southampton, Nottingham Forest and Aberdeen have been visitors in recent weeks to check on Robert Lee, Ian Lee and Ian Gibson. I don't know if that wouldn't have been the Ian Gibson that played for Hearts. Surely not.
No, and St Johnstone manager. No, it wouldn't have been him. No, he'd have been long gone by then. I think Ian Lee might have ended up at McDermott. I'd say I could be wrong, but that rings a bell. And it'll certainly not be the Robert Lee. No,
no, that's the thing. I mean, I recognise two of the names, but not for probably the players that they're talking about here. So the next one is Irish uproar. So the League of Ireland are taking action against a number of veteran Englishmen crossing the Irish Sea to prolong their careers. They believe players like Frank Worthington and John Hollands are damaging the image of the Irish game, saying they think the game here is easy and that there's soft money to pick up. When they find out that is not the case, they disappear, sometimes after just one match. Most of these veterans get around £300 per match plus expenses, which would meet the cost of 6 local players. And as if to just back up their concerns, and as a spoiler, Frank Worthington played 2 games for Galway United and John Hollands played just the one for Cove Ramblers. Now I'm not sure if this was written after those two played those games or they really could see into the future, because as I say, John Hollands only played one, so I don't know if this is a reaction to those 2 players having come, played and gone, or if, they just saw that coming. But again, I mean, it happened in Scotland. It happens in Scotland as well, isn't it? Where we just think, there's foreigners coming over and they're less or the same standard of players we've already got here, but just because they're foreign, we pay a premium for them.
From a journalist point of view, looking at that though, you think, what a waste. I mean, that is a great story. You know, three pars and their equivalent of the news and briefs. Now, you know, I think the editors missed a trick there. That should have been a much bigger piece.
Yeah.
And who is the spokesman apart from anything else? But you know, I mean, you've got two of those, Frank Worthington and John Hollins. You know, if you were to flesh out that piece, you know, they were two legends of English football, and I'm sure there'd be two or three others you could name check as well. So no, I think that's a missed opportunity for a right good story there.
Yeah, and you just think Frank Worthington gone over there. You could sort of liken that to George Best going to Hibs, maybe, in that same sort of, you know, it could have raised the profile of, was it Galway United? So I guess that was part of the thought process of the.
I put a few in the gate, it's bound to be. Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Wasn't it anything to do with the licensing laws? Then you could drink longer in pubs.
Yeah.
Tony Parks went out next week.
Yeah. Probably wouldn't have harmed the situation, yeah. So the next one is Newcastle have rejected a bid of £750,000 from Leeds United for John Hendry, who had moved to Newcastle from Bradford for £500,000 just the year before. Boss Jim Smith is quoted as saying, "While our financial position is not good, I want to hang on to my best players." Now, as a spoiler, John would move to Leeds. The fee was quoted in the region of around £600,000. He would only spend one season there, but he was still voted in the top 100 Leeds players in 2000.
I think he was a guy who was well liked everywhere he went.
Yeah,
John Hendry.
Can't picture him in a Leeds kit, I must admit. You know, I can picture him in a few different kits down south, but no, I can't. You know, the Leeds bit passed me by, but so would the 750 grand as well. He didn't get close to a cap, did he?
No, I don't think he did.
No. Coventry City started that, Bradford City, Newcastle United to Leeds, and then Middlesbrough and Barnsley. He managed at Barnsley for a season.
It's the last two I remember, because he played in the top flight with Barnsley, didn't he?
Yeah. He managed. I don't know if he managed in the top division, but he managed at Barnsley there as well. Moving on to Siggy's staying for now. So this is Ziggy Johnson. And the article has an accompanying photo of Icelandic international Ziggy Johnson, who is currently playing for Sheffield Wednesday. He's being linked with a £400,000 move to Celtic, which the Owls have rejected. Arsenal boss George Graham is also interested. Johnson says, "I don't want to leave Wednesday while they're in danger of relegation. This has been my best season in England, and I want to repay the club who gave me my big chance by helping them to stay in the First Division." He began at IA in Iceland before moving to Wednesday in '84. Arsenal would win the race for his signature in '89 for £475,000, and he spent 2 seasons playing just 8 league games due to injury. He returned to IA in '92 before moving to Sweden in '96 with Örebro SK. He would then move to Dundee United in '97 and spend 3 years there. Injury again curtailed his playing, and he eventually returned to Iceland to finish his career. He played for the national team 65 times, scoring 3 goals, and he moved into management after that. Ziggy Johnson at Dundee United?
I don't remember much about Ziggy Johnson at Dundee United. I do remember him from, if I was to pick a team, it would have been Sheffield Wednesday. But, no, Dundee United, no, I don't think he's not going to be running Ralph Mountain close for Player of the Century awards.
I think certainly when I've posted...
How many times did he play for United, Andy?
Tom, can you have a quick look up on that?
Uh-huh.
But when I've posted it a few times, there's been, you know what responses are like sometimes from people. I think he was involved with he was injured pretty badly with Graham Souness. Is that right, Tom? Yeah. I think, in one of the games. And a lot of people go on about how it basically ruined his career. But I actually came across an article where he says himself, a lot of people think that, but it wasn't really. It was early in his career, and he got over that injury. You know, I guess a lot of people just automatically gravitate towards the negative when certain players or teams are involved. But it came. But when I read that, I sort of think maybe that interview was done when he came to Scotland, and maybe just to make his life a bit easier and diffuse the situation. Maybe that's what he said. So I could, take that with a little bit of pinch of salt. But yeah, so Tom?
He played 48 starts for Dundee United across 3 seasons.
That's more than I would have thought, to be honest with you. Yeah.
It's a good bit of a mullet going on there he's wearing as well. So
blended in fine, isn't he, over here?
Yeah. Okay, moving on, and we have Sir Stanley Matthews turns out. So Sir Stanley Matthews has agreed to turn out in a testimonial for Stoke keeper Peter Fox at the end of the season. He's now 74 years old. Now, Peter did have a testimonial in September that year against Everton where they lost 4-2, but there's no mention of Sir Stanley, having played or even been involved. 74 years old, you're thinking maybe he'll take the centre or something like that. So Tom, you came up with this.
Yeah, so there was a 7-a-side game during a long half time between a sort of Everton's coaching staff, including Paul Power, and an old Stoke Old Boys team, and Stanley Matthews doesn't appear to be part of it.
Yeah, I've not found anything at all which says that he was involved in the game. And you think if he was, then there'd be something there.
You would like to think so, yes. Yeah. Alan Hudson there, I see. There's a few familiar names there. I do remember, I used to get Peter Fox a lot in the Panini sticker album, so I remember him.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move on to Motherwell sell Paul Kinnaird. And Motherwell boss Tommy McLean has pulled off a sharp piece of business by selling striker Paul Kinnaird to rivals St Mirren in a £90,000 deal. Tommy paid his brother Jim just $20,000 to sign him from Dundee United, and in a year the player has failed to score a single goal at Motherwell. A man of many teams, including 3 games at St Johnson in 1993. I don't know if you remember that, Eric.
I remember him being there. I don't remember the games.
He played 4 times for Clydebank in 2001, and he played 57 league games for St Mirren, scoring 4 goals. So I'm just going to quickly run through the teams he's played for, okay? So Dundee United.
This could be a quiz, couldn't it?
Yeah. Dundee United, Motherwell, St Mirren, Partick Thistle, Shrewsbury Town, St Johnstone, Partick Thistle, Derry City, Bohemians, Partick Thistle, Dunfermline, Scarborough, Ayr United, Stranraer, Ross County, Queen of the South, Brecon, Partick Thistle, Clydebank, Irvine Meadow and Muirkirk. And there was actually a couple I missed out there because they were...
The ones I would say I'd most remember him for, I'd say Thistle, probably Motherwell and St Mirren. I mean, I don't know if the numbers back it up for those were the ones where he played most, but they're probably the 3. Certainly not St Johnstone. United, he was, there was so many talented players at United when he would have been there. It's little wonder that he really didn't make his mark. But no, he wasn't the quickest, was he? But he had a trick on him.
Yeah. To be honest, I don't really remember him playing much. Do you remember him playing at Clydebank, Tom?
No, really. To be honest.
No.
No, really.
Yeah, I mean, he seems to be in and out. Dundee United 18 games, Motherwell 34, St Mirren 57, Thistle 33, and then after that it's Ayr United 45, way further down Stranraer 53, Ross County 47. So he is getting appearances and playing, but it's just in and out. So yeah, Tommy McLean certainly pulled off a nice bit of business there, a nice £70,000 profit on that. We're on the Brentford team photo, so we're on page 17, and this kit is, firstly, it's a little bit busy on the eyes, this kit, isn't it? It's made from the kit, I don't know if you've heard of this one, called Hobot. Hobot.
No, that's a new one to me.
Yeah, so there was a few teams round about this time who had that, teams in England, but Hobot. The shirt is a red and white striped kit, but the stripes are pretty narrow. And the shirt sponsor is KLM, which is in black, which really doesn't... It loses it with those stripes as well. It's an absolute travesty of a kit, if we're being perfectly honest. The keeper's shirt is shiny, with a black... It's green, with a black collar. The Minerva Supreme footballs are probably the highlight of the team group photo for me. As I say, we've got Tony Parks in there, and I did say he's 5'10".
I was going to say, he looks wee there, doesn't he?
He can,
small there, yeah.
Certainly. I mean, the lad in the middle, who's that beside him?
Terry Evans.
Terry Evans. I mean, he looks a bit of a unit, doesn't he? Yeah.
He's the weakest guy in that back row, isn't
he? Yeah. He's possible. I don't know about possible in the team, but yeah, definitely. So we've got, we've already spoke about Tony Parks. Marcus Gale's in there. Brentford 88 to 94 went to Wimbledon. Rangers when he played. I'd completely forgotten that he played for Rangers. And he was bought for £1 million in 2001.
I couldn't have told
Would that
you
have been Alex McLeish in 2000, or was that Dick Advocaat still? Would it have been? It wouldn't have been Dick Advocaat. Would it have been Alex McLeish in 2001? 4 games he played for Rangers. So £250,000 a game. That's some going that. Manager Steve Perryman, who played a total of 854 games for Spurs, which is still a club record, and he has 1 international cap. Andy Sinton's in there. He's going to play for QPR, Sheffield Wednesday, Spurs and Wolves. He got 12 England caps, and he was the Brentford Supporters Player of the Year in 86, 87 and 87, 88. Richard Cadet is another Brentford player who moved to Falkirk. He was there between 92 and 94 and played 7 games for the Bankies in 1997, scoring 1 goal. Now, just as a wee spoiler on the season, Brentford finished 7th in the 3rd division, so they were in the 3rd division at this point, just narrowly missing out on the playoffs. Do we want to talk about any of those? Anything we want to pick out about the team photo itself?
Big letters there, eh? Deary me, you're not going to miss them, are you? The cleaning ladies getting it easy.
All right, the initials you're talking about here, yeah. Yeah, as I say, it's a kit that I'm, finishing 7th in the league. I don't know if they won anything that season, but I'm sure it's a kit that's best forgot by Brentford supporters. You don't want to win a cup that season, do you? You don't want to win the league that season when you've got a strip like that.
I don't think the sponsors will be very happy either, will they?
Yeah, but
can't even read it.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the ones where you think either a white background or, and as much as I hate them, the bib strip would.
We'll get to that later, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, the St Johnson one, yeah.
Yeah.
Match winner.
Yeah, which it was very, very popular when the Clydebank were match winner at the time as well. Okay, so we're going to jump out the magazine, Eric, and we're going to focus on yourself and have a wee chat. So I'm going to fire some questions at you.
On you go.
Full name?
Eric Alexander Nicholson.
Birthplace?
Glasgow.
First car?
Ah, right. Is that the one I owned, or the first car, Mum and Dad's first car I owned?
Your first car?
My first car would have been a Fiesta.
Do you remember the colour?
Red.
Good man. Favourite player of all time?
Kenny Dalglish.
Favourite team?
Liverpool.
Most memorable match?
Oh, listen, I have to say, actually getting to Anfield for the first time, we were lucky. I waited and waited because I took my boy to Liverpool West Ham, and it was just before lockdown. So we were so lucky. We were so lucky in regards that Liverpool won because it was the last game of their unbeaten run. I don't know if you remember, it was 3-2 against West Ham, and they were down a couple of times, and it looked like we were going to be the jinx after waiting all this time that Liverpool's unbeaten run was going to end and it was going to be all our fault. But of course we saw it, and then they only played 2 more games, and then it was lockdown. So they lost to Watford the following weekend. But no, that was just being there with my boy for the first one at Anfield was superb. But if you're talking in terms of best game I've seen, you've only got to go a few weeks back, or most dramatic for me as a journalist, Saints and Rangers. I mean, you will never see a finish to a game like that. So there you go.
Yeah. Okay, biggest thrill in your life?
Football
or personal? Whatever you're willing to share.
Well, I was going to say, what about that 4-leaf clovers against Pittenweem penalty shootout? That's what I was thinking of when I was watching De Gea coming up, Andy.
Yeah.
You missed yours, didn't you?
My memory's really not what it used to be.
So did Owen, mind you. I was in the 4-leaf clovers team. And this is what we're talking about for people who haven't got a clue what we're talking about. We're talking at St Andrews University with a penalty shootout by the two big Sunday league teams of the time, and it went all the way to the goalies, didn't it? And I was my best mate still from university, Owen Bell, who was, and I was willing him to miss it because I knew if he scored the winning penalty, and he would have been too unbearable even. But anyway.
Do you know that's something I've genuinely probably not thought about since that day, that very day. I've put it in my mind, so thank you for bringing that back.
Because it came out of it was the first thing I thought about the other night there with that Villarreal Man United one, and the penalty shootout that didn't want to end.
Well, you know, somebody's got to end it. Somebody's got to say, like, enough's enough. And if you've got to be the one who misses the penalty, then you know you're making a stand. That's the way I see it.
My biggest thrill in my life, dear me. Oh God, you got to say your kid's been born, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No problem. What's been your biggest disappointment?
I mean, football games did crush you when you, I mean, let's talk football. Football games did crush you when you were a kid and stuff. And, you know, Scotland, I think which World Cup one was the most disappointing one.
Yeah.
Oh, listen, as a punter, actually, that's an easy one. As a punter at Euro 96 down at Wembley, that was horrendous. I can remember. That's probably the nearest, as a grown man, I've been at tears at a football game. That just, yeah. I mean, I remember I sat with my brother behind the goal at Wembley, and I did see the ball move on the penalty spot before he kicked it, and that whole sickening feel. I mean, the whole Gaza thing, just you're oblivious to it being a good goal, and you've just been absolutely sick. I mean, it was the best of days up until that point, because you felt like there was whatever 10,000 Scots there, and you felt like there was 100,000. But see, after that happened, and the place just. There was England, and that's the first time that England were doing the football's coming home, and it's just getting your way out of Wembley after that. No, that was a horror. That was a horror.
Yeah. Okay, what's the best country that you visited?
That's a good one. Through work, I thought it's some of the ones that you don't expect. You know, you'll never go back to. I loved covering St Johnstone out in Armenia. A place called in Yerevan. That was a fantastic place to go, because you would never go to places like this again. I mean, Saints will probably get somebody else again in Europe, you know, in the middle of nowhere. But it was a great trip, a really fascinating city. I loved. Where else did I? I loved that. I hope Saints draw. I know they could get Rapid Vienna. I hope they get them, and I get to go there, because did you go? Again, we're going all St Andrews Uni here. Did you go on the Bratislava stag do? You did, didn't you?
Yeah. Yes.
And there was a few of us took a train journey to Vienna.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I can't remember.
Me, Matt Dyer, and a couple others. Again, we're all getting sort of, it's a bit of an in-story here, but fleeting trip. That's the only time I've been to Vienna. I'd love to go back there. I thought it looked like a beautiful city.
You mentioned Matt Dyer, who used to play for East Fife, was it?
Fife, yes, indeed. Yes. So, yeah, I'll go for football trips. Yerevan was a great trip.
Okay, nice one. What's your favourite food? You know the stock answer for this from the Shoot magazines.
Oh yeah, it's not steak and chips, or lager and lager tops, is it?
Yeah, lager and lime.
Probably say if it's shouldn't be this hard. This one should have, but a good roast beef, probably. Yeah, good roast beef.
Okay, miscellaneous likes. So give me 2 things that you like doing.
I don't get to play much golf anymore, but yeah. Coaching, helping coach my wee boys' football team, Genefield Swifts. Yeah, I love that. And watching my wee girl at the dancing. There you go.
Okay. Miscellaneous dislikes. So 2 things that drive you up the wall.
Oh, I would never, ever think about going fishing. My father-in-law, that's all he speaks about. And that's just one thing I could never, ever see. If Ross decided if he decided he wanted to go fishing, oh, that'd be the worst thing. Probably hill climbing as well. Actually, I can safely say I will never climb a Munro. There we go.
I'm just back today from a wild camp up a mountain. So.
Are you into all that now, Andy?
Aye, yeah. I'm walking daft and running daft. Me, that's about all I do. So yeah, you don't
fish as well, do you?
No. That's taking it too far. Fishing. I'm with you in fishing. Don't worry. What's your favourite TV show of all time?
Oh, I used to love the Rocky movies, but TV show Cheers.
Cheers. Alas, somebody, because this is the one I keep coming back to. Cheers is absolute genius, and you're the first person yet to say Cheers. So thank you very much. I'm absolutely delighted with that. The
later series rather than I preferred it when it was.
Oh no, you're losing me. You're losing me. You had me wholeheartedly there.
Emma.
Yeah, you're more the Kirstie Alley fan then. I mean, I think
that's when I started. I didn't watch it, and then I went back the way. So right. Yeah, I think I started somewhere in the middle, then worked my way back. So okay. Yeah, but they're all good. They're all brilliant.
Right. Okay. Good save. Favourite singers. So give us two singers or bands or groups.
Oh, I saw Oasis a few times. I was lucky to see them, but as I can remember now, it's not very trendy. But I can also remember going to see. I used to love going with my brother to see. Do you remember Gun back in the day in Glasgow?
Yeah, I remember Gun. Yeah,
used to love seeing that. They were a magnificent band live. But sort of, they're certainly not very trendy these days. But yeah, Oasis, Manics, love saw the Manics live a good few times as well. That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get my sort of genre there.
Okay. Favourite actors? So again, two. You can get two.
Oh dear, who do I? Russell Crowe. He's been a lot of like a lot of Russell Crowe films. And who are guys that like who are in my head at the minute? See, I'm not a big film man, but I suppose Persia boy. Yeah, I have to say Ewan McGregor, don't I really? And I bumped into him at local curry house when he was back. We live near Crieff, so he went to the same curry place as me, and a place called Medlin. So now we'll go for McGregor then. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm reliably informed that he doesn't listen to this podcast, so you could have got away with that. So.
It's not McGregor at all, actually.
Who's your best friend?
Oh, mate, still be boys from uni, actually. There you go, two of them. Owen and Minky, as you know him. So I don't see as much of them. I see plenty of Owen, but don't see much of Minky. But I've got good pals in up here as well. But yeah, you kind of see less of your mates, don't you, when you start to have kids? So yeah, the St Andrews boys have more than school pals. I've not got any. There's none of my old school pals I'm still in touch with. So no, The uni boys, must be time for a reunion again.
Listen, I'm up for that. Okay, so who's been the biggest influence on you? So let's go from a journalistic point of view. Who's influenced you the most?
From a journalistic point of view, I mean, the guys you work with at the very start, and Gordon Barnum was the sort of guy, and he was the other sister paper. He worked at the Persia Advertiser and is a real talented local journalist. I probably would have picked up loads of him. Yeah, it's just guys you work alongside in the office. I don't really have one as such, just you pick up things off different. I mean, the guys I like to read, still guys now who I work with, who work with peers that are as good as anything that. I mean, Mark O'Fanny, I loved his stuff. I loved all the guys that Spears and that when I was reading rather than writing. But yeah, just local guys that you worked close with. Places like when you're covering news at Sheriff Courts and stuff like that. Old hands that would show you the ropes. Probably no guys you would have heard of. But yeah. I didn't have like a big sort of inspirational journalistic figure. I thought, I want to be him type thing.
Okay. Final question: which person in the world would you most like to meet?
Oh, it'd probably be Klopp just now, I would think. I mean, but then I was, I did one press conference with King Kenny, and when he was with Celtic, and I was covering a St Johnstone Celtic game, and it wasn't a good time, as you both knew. It was obviously he'd taken over after Barnes had gone, and I didn't have the guts to ask a question because I'd heard too many people who, like I've got pals who like had sort of Willie Miller on a pedestal, or so, you know what I mean. And once you ask I mean, I knew if I'd asked Kenny Dalglish a question, I couldn't tell you if Celtic had won that game or if St Johnstone had won it, what the score was, but you could be guaranteed he didn't like the press. And if I'd asked him a question, he would have slapped me down. He would have given a sarky answer, and that would have ruined everything. So, yeah. So if Jurgen Klopp, maybe I'm best not asking him a question because he'd probably do the same. But yeah, Klopp. If I met him in a non-journalistic capacity, I'm sure he'd be nice to me.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Tom. Do you have any questions for Eric?
I was going to add on another couple, Eric. In the course of your work, who's the most interesting person you've met?
Right,
it didn't have to be anybody famous, but
it would have probably been news-wise rather than, because I did a lot of news reporting before. I was kind of mixed the sport with the news, so I'm trying to think who. Oh, there's probably if you'd given me these questions beforehand, I could have come up with interesting answers for you. But, And I did get to meet your Ewan McGregors and, people, sort of actors and stuff like that. I'm trying to think of other sports. Denise Lewis, I remember. I liked speaking to Jonathan Edwards. I liked doing Commonwealth Games and speaking to sports people that aren't footballers. So I'm trying to think on who would have been one of them. Yeah, Denise Lewis. I enjoyed interviewing her. Jonathan Edwards was another one. You got me on that one. I won't come back to it if another news one comes into my mind. But you would see when you're speaking to like the top lawyers and stuff. Donald Finlay, a really interesting character. Not in a football capacity, but speaking to these, the guys that are top of their profession. I mean, politicians. Salmond's really interesting. I remember going to when he gave a lecture when we were at St Andrews, Andy. I went to go and see him, and then I remember speaking to him, not in a politics one. He did a guest column or a guest tipsters column in the Courier, and just speaking to him in that capacity was quite fascinating. I'm not talking whether I like him or loathe him as a politician, but it's good when you speak to these people when the dictaphones are off, and you do realise they're just normal folk.
All right, so maybe a wee bit easier for you then, Eric. So, had you been a professional football player, what would your ideal career have been?
I would think it would have been. I would have liked to. I don't know if I wouldn't have wanted to be a one club man. I would have loved to have played for Liverpool, obviously, but then you'd want to come. I'd want to go to. I think I'd be one of these. I'm trying to think who. I'd probably be one of these that would be going around ticking the boxes of all that. I'd probably do a Beckham, go to, tick a couple of years at all the top big names teams and get them. I'd probably been a traitor like Michael Owen, going away to Madrid or a Steve McManaman. I'd like to think I would have stayed at Liverpool and, been signed there and then just, become a legend down there. That would have done for me. Right. And obviously won 100 caps for Scotland as well. But doing the whole, I mean, it felt like such a huge thing. I don't know how big a thing it'll feel if Scotland get out of their group. But for me as a kid, it felt like the most enormous thing in the world, Scotland getting to the knockout stages of a tournament. So I'd love to think this summer it will be treated as an absolutely enormous thing if they do. But I've got a feeling it might not. I don't know. I just think the way that qualification out of group stages these days, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a lot easier than it used to be. And I used to think that would have been like climbing Everest for Scotland, just getting out of the group.
Maybe the first one will feel that way, but maybe if we get to another tournament, then it'll be a case of, it'll start to feel a little bit, well, we should have done that anyway. Mm-hmm. Maybe, certainly for people of our generation and above, it'll probably be, appreciated more than others will.
Yeah, well, this Euros, you've got, I think, the four best third place teams?
Third places, I know. You basically need to win a game, don't you?
Yeah.
Probably.
Aye, it's great. Just win a game and don't get tanked in the others.
And I think we've got the manager that'll go in with that mindset. He'll certainly not open up at Wembley to think, he'll probably settle for a 2-0 defeat, in that game, and hope he gets a win and a draw in the other two,
Well, which is what a typical performance in the finals kind of thing, a win, a draw, a defeat, and that would probably see us through to the knockout.
We'll find a way not to. We'll find a way to get that minimum and still not make it. But here we go. Any other questions, Tom?
No, over to you.
Okay, so I'd quite like to know what got you into journalism, and how you got to where you are now, being the sports writer at the Courier. Talk to us about that.
Well, I did. You're getting to about, I think it was about fourth or fifth year, and your teacher starts speaking to you about what you want to do type thing. And I did think at that stage, I thought, I quite fancy journalism. And my English teacher at the time, a guy, Mr. McLean, this is at Perth Academy, he suggested I do the sports editor, but you're the only one that did it in the school paper. So I did that and liked it, but then went to uni at St Andrews, not then at that point thinking, I wasn't going there thinking I'm going to be a journalist, because you'd try to get into Napier or Robert Gordon because they had journalism courses at the time. So I went to uni probably like many other people, just wanting to keep my options open, enjoy it, did English and modern history, and there wasn't a master plan, and it was only at the end I did. It was at the time when you go to the careers folk and you start to go in interviews and something, and I was on this at Tesco management. I was in a Tesco management program, so I had an interview for this sort of fast track Tesco management scheme that it was unbelievable. I had an interview at Dundee, then I had an interview at Irvine, and then down at a selection centre in Hertfordshire to be this rapid progress management in Tesco. And I was down there. It was a 2-day thing, and they're watching, how when you're eating one of these things and you're doing ridiculous role play things. It's like some sort of apprentice thing. And I'm coming back in the train. I'm thinking, what am I doing? Can't be doing this at all. It's not for me. And then put in a letter to all the major publishers at the time, and as it was a pure fluke that DC Thomson were the last of they did an in-house training course, which was like a sort of, so you didn't need, your degree didn't matter. They took graduates, they took people straight from school, and they basically trained you. You did 3-4 months in as a sort of, just being schooled, and then you did sort of, you went out into the district offices and learned it that way. So it was a really, really good way of doing it. And we were the last of it, because as it progressed, they would basically hire people for specific posts, and you'd kind of get a week or two max where you did your shorthand, and all the rest of it was just kind of blended in. But this was like they took you in and then found you places for you, rather than hiring people for jobs. So I was lucky in that regard. And that was it. Basically, I just kind of thought, what do you want to do, basically? And wasn't to necessarily be a sports journalist, it was just to be a journalist. And then it all kind of fell into place after that. I was in a district office where you did pretty much a bit of everything. So sheriff courts, councils, fatal accidents, flower shows, Highland Games. And for me, I'd got to do St Johnstone as well as the dedicated sports guys. So I would be phoning up Paul Sturrock. He was my first St Johnstone manager. I'd be phoning up McDermott Park, badgering him to get him, and then you'd have to phone him. Again, we were talking earlier about how things had changed. If you didn't get him at the park, you'd phone him at home. You got to know, his wife would know my name would know my voice straight away, and would go and fetch him out the bath or whatnot. And that was me. So I wasn't straight into sport. I found my way through. I wouldn't change it. I know there are journalists that would be, well, I've done football and nothing but football, or sport and nothing but sport. But I always think it stood me in good stead to have a general background and then specialise. So no, that was my route into it.
No, I find it interesting you say that when you were in it, you weren't necessarily, looking for a goal of being a sports writer or a football writer.
I think most would do now. They would think, yeah, that's what I want to do.
Yeah. Okay, so talk to us, double cup winning champion St Johnstone. Talk to us about what this means to you, what it means to the club, what sort of achievement it is. Is it the greatest achievement, the greatest manager St Johnstone have had?
I know. I would feel a bit guilty about. To me, it's the greatest season. That's beyond argument. You can't, and it's the greatest managerial achievement. But when you stack it, you still got to give Tommy Wright his place and say he kept St Johnstone at an incredibly high level for years and years and years. And so, you can state a case for both if you're going to say who's the greatest manager, but as a greatest achievement and a great season, it's beyond parallel. It is, and it was an absolute. You asked about for me personally. It was I always feel a wee bit, it is a bit awkward. You do try to find line, because of fans that proper St Johnstone fans that haven't seen any of it in the flesh, but I've been in the privileged position to this season to have seen pretty much all the games and cover it, you know. And I don't think there'll be. I mean, I've done Olympics, Commonwealth Games, blah blah blah, all that. You know, we'll be doing the Euros this summer and all that sort of stuff. But for a one-off season of domestic football, I'll never get to cover a season like it again. You know, my car knew its own way to Hampden by the end. You know, it was just unbelievable. And every time you thought it wasn't gonna, I mean, when I went to Ibrox, that was the point. I was thinking my year, but that was me sort of on the wind down. You know, it was gonna get a bit easier, and you know, Saints would lose at Ibrox. They probably get they might get European football. I thought they would get above Livingston, but you think they've won their cup. You know, that's it. And then everything happens at Ibrox, and you just all again. You think you're going to another level, and then they win the double, and it is. I mean, I wasn't thinking about it in the build up to it, but certainly when I was writing my piece after it, you go and you try to compare other achievements in Scottish football in terms of domestic. Now I know that the Lisbon Lions will rightly always be at the top because of what everything meant, but for a domestic season, I certainly can't come up with anything comparable to a club of St Johnstone's size, budget. You talk about the peers, all right, Celtic are weaker, but they're not weak, in terms of the might of them just now. We all know what Rangers have done. So for St Johnstone to win 2 cups with the squad they had, with the rookie manager, with everything, to win both domestic cups in one season, I don't think there is a domestic single season story that compares with it. I don't. None of the league champions. Dundee United. Yes, it's a magnificent achievement, but was it such a huge shock that Dundee United won the league, that Aberdeen won the league under Fergie? It certainly wasn't the 10,000 to 1 shot that they're now saying St Johnstone were. Leicester were 5,000 to 1 to win their league. The Premier League. So I think it's unprecedented.
I agree with what you say about it's a greatest season maybe and a great managerial achievement, but it's difficult to look at in the moment. I think to look at what this actually means. Maybe 10 years time you can look back and with a bit of hindsight. People are wanting to get people's opinions on it, but I don't think. I think you need a bit of history around it. What happens to St Johnstone now? Did it build on from here and become the third force or the fourth force in Scottish football for the next 10, 15 years? Or do they get relegated next season? In which case that sort of puts everything into context. So
when they won the bet, Fred, that put them above the rest as the most successful one next to Celtic for a decade. So that is, we're not talking a one season here. We are talking a decade, since McInnes brought them up. So because you're throwing in, this is, umpteen European qualifications as well, and they're very rarely out the top 6, so they've already got a cannon of work behind them. So it's going to be looked on as an era. Three trophies in 7 years. It's
remarkable that there's a couple of guys with 2 Scottish Cup winners medals, both with St Johnstone.
I mean, it makes managers it made it for Derek McInnes. For example, all of a sudden it makes what he's done at Aberdeen that's. I mean, I'm sure it's a coincidence, but I'm sure it was a bit of a tipping point as well when Aberdeen fans were suddenly saying St Johnstone have won 2 trophies. Now that when they won the Betfred, they've won more than us in this era compared to Derek McInnes, and obviously Aberdeen were the second force while Rangers were away, and then they were the third force. But fans want silverware, don't they?
Yeah. I heard an very interesting fact which I like about Stuart Cosgrove, that I don't know if he was at the last final, I'm assuming he was, and he's been at every single cup final that St Johnstone have won. Yeah,
he's game. I'd try to think if Stuart will know better than me, but there may well have been somebody else, but it sounds plausible because there was very certain, it felt like there was more people at the Scottish Cup final than the Betfred. I don't know if that was...
Yeah, he mentioned about looking up. He mentioned about looking up at the board and things like that, and there was nobody there who would have been at the...
I know he probably would have been right.
I mean, that's a right pub quiz question, that,
and
isn't it? Yeah.
And it just...
So at least we know, us 3 here, there's nobody else will listen to this, so it's just us 3.
sure Stuart Cosgrove will be telling plenty of folk, don't worry about that.
Okay. Anything else before we move on, Tom?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so I'm just going to have a bit of charity partner. So this is the Western Bartonshire Community Food Share, and it's this season. That's your charity partner, and this charitable organisation provides various services and support to the local community, including the following: a school uniform bank, school holiday brunch bags, food provisions, Christmas toy bank, cooking and growing lessons, and a baby bank. They provide essential support to the local community and supporting individuals and families, and we'll be looking to support them any way we can through the podcast. This will include drives for donations of food, money and support in the form of volunteers. We'll also be raising awareness of the group to highlight the work that they do, but also to ensure that families and individuals who can benefit from the group are aware of these vital services. You can follow them on Western Bartonshire Community Food Share Group on Facebook, or Western Bartonshire Community Food Share for the website. You can also donate through our Just Giving page for the charity at justgiving.com/fundraising/shootthebreeze, all one word. Also keep an eye on our Twitter accounts at shoottb_podcast and at Scots Footy Cards for updates and news on our charity partner. So let's have a wee look back into the magazine. Here we go. So we're on pages 19 to 22. So this is sort of, there's a kids feel to these pages, you know. Shoot, I always think Shoot, you know, people say it was a comic, it was for young kids, but I don't necessarily agree with that. But I think at this period there was sections of it that certainly look as though they're focused more on the younger reader. So they say Shoot puts the fun back into soccer with Hoot. And the first one, you'll be surprised, Tom, I'm going to look at Ray of the Rangers. So the storyline behind this is centred around the goalkeeper Tubby Tompkins, who, as you can imagine from his name, is a big fat goalie. During training he won't dive to save shots, so Ray has an idea and sends someone to the tuck shop to get some items. Next we see a number of cakes being fired into Tubby Tompkins rather than footballs, and of course he saves them all. Yeah, I stay clear as a rule from the comics strips or the cartoons in this, just because you know I'm Tom's beginning to educate me in it. You know, it's more about the art than the stories really, and I had to pick this one because look who the artist is and the script. So we've got Steve McGarry, who's a previous guest on here, who's an absolute god as far as I'm concerned in terms of artistic work, and script by Tony Husband as well, who did a lot of stuff as well. So that's a great double hitter there. So the next one is You Are the Ref. So we'll have a look at this. It says a defender standing inside his own penalty area handles the ball outside the area. You award a free kick outside the area. From the free kick, the ball was passed to another attacker who's tripped outside the penalty area but falls into the penalty area. You award a penalty. When the penalty is taken, the ball rebounds from the goalkeeper to the kicker who scores. You allow the goal. Where is the problem? Anybody?
Yeah, I should have been listening more than
He gave a penalty when he should have gave a free kick.
Yeah, the player's been tripped outside the box and is taking a tumble inside the box, and he's given a. But don't worry, VAR would sort all this out now. Good old VAR. I can't believe we've gone to VAR. Should we just forget about VAR and move on? Yeah.
that. Martin Boyle there, was it?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see this updated now. For you are working in the VAR truck.
Yeah. You are the ref, but your decision may be overturned.
How many replays do you watch before you decide?
Yeah. So moving on, the Coca-Cola Football Association Soccer Star Scheme is the next thing we're going to look at. And here we go. And this, again, talking about Steve McGarry, he's done the artistic work on this. And it is described as a soccer education programme for boys and girls aged 6 to 16 years. There's also a telephone number that teachers, coaches and youth leaders can call to find more about the scheme. The strip shows John Barnes and describes running with the ball, saying that the key factors are: number 1, first touch into space; number 2, play the ball well in front of you; and number 3, keep your head up. I'm not so sure about number 2, if I'm being honest. Play the ball well in front of you.
I wouldn't be coaching that these days.
Yeah, play it, relatively close to you, so that they can't just pick it away from you. But I'm sure. I'll have a wee chat with Steve McGarry. I'm sure that all he's done is just draw the pictures, and he hasn't come up with these things. So, okay, the next thing we're going to look at is we're on the Greaves' letter page. So this is always good for a wee bit of either fun or to get me wound up. So let's see which one this one's going to do. So Ward is innocent. Okay, is this letter, and it's a star letter, and it comes from Ollie Horstrop of Saltwood in Kent, who gets £10 for that letter. That's a lot of money. 45p for the magazine. There we go. That's good money. Now, Ollie says, if the FA can ban Paul Davis on the strength of TV evidence, why can't they use the same means to clear West Ham's Mark Ward in his sending off against Charlton? Now, Greavesy replies, because they don't want to use TV to question referees' decisions. Now, Greavesy agrees that Ward was hard done by and suggests that the FA just want to protect the refs. He then compares it to the police using CCTV footage to arrest troublemakers in the crowd, but then saying that they don't have enough evidence to convict Brian Clough for punching Forest fans. That's a bit... Basically, he's saying Brian Clough should be locked up. Yeah.
He's gone into coffee there, isn't he?
I mean, it's like... That's something that should be on the front page. Cloughy locked up, says Brian.
Yeah, it says Greavesy.
Yeah. Next one, going to have a look at hit the kickers. So Richard Erbett of Bishop Auckland writes, what do you think of the idea of deducting league points from clubs with bad disciplinary records? Greavesy replies that it's not something he goes along with, as it depends on the whims and inconsistencies of the referees. So he's giving the referees a bit of a hard time with this. Next one, you English are never satisfied. Eric Degonville from Paris in France is next up, and he says, why are you English so critical of your football? I saw Arsenal beat the French national team and couldn't believe how good they were. You should be grateful to have such fine sides. So Greavesy is actually surprised that Eric thinks it's better, and he thinks the French are better at international level, but he does think the English are better at league level. And there is a photo there from the game. Just go back there, so you can see down the bottom right a photo from that France Arsenal game. 2-0 was it, Tom, that Arsenal won that game?
I'll take your word for it.
I think so.
By the way, we're not genuinely believing that these are real folk writing in these letters. Come on, we're not having that.
Yeah, to be honest, the Eric Degonville is a sort of a low beginning. Why are you English so critical of your football? Yeah.
Maybe the man that's got the tenner, or maybe that's just a pal of the editor at Shoot as well.
That pays for a lunch, doesn't it? For
exactly.
Yeah, you know how it works, Eric. You know how it works. We've got a double page spread here for the army. Loads of pictures, colourful pictures of trying to get people to join the army. There's a Mars bar in there. There we go. That will get me to join the army, no doubt. Moving on, here we go. So pages 28 and 29. So we looked earlier on at Albania, England. We're going to look at Scotland versus France here. So these two pages show 3 colour photos from Scotland versus France at Hampden, with both goals coming from Mo Johnson. The first shows Mo firing home in the 29th minute, and Paul McStay and Ali McCoist look on in the background while a couple of French players have their arms raised in a desperate plea for offside. The second photo shows Paul McStay with the ball, having left a French midfielder lying on the turf in his wake, and I'm thinking possibly a blurry Roy Aitken in the background.
Yeah, it's Aitken, isn't it?
I think, yeah. The next one is the last photo shows Mo Johnson scoring his second as he bullets a header at the French keeper, who, if you remember, he fumbled it over the line. Mm-hmm. Also shown marking him tightly, not that tightly though, as Franck Sauzet, the French defender. The Group 5 table is showing, let's just go back, so Scotland at the top of the group on 7 points after 4 games. Yugoslavia are in second on 5 points from 3 games, followed by France, Norway and then Cyprus. I mean, it's not, possibly then it was a little bit easier, but it's not the most easy of groups. And then accompanying article that goes with it, Johnson says, now I can go back to France with a smile on my face. We have taken 7 points out of 8 and we are on our way to Italy. I like that confidence. Yugoslavia and Scotland both qualified from the group. Scotland in second place, so Yugoslavia topped it. Anybody want to say anything about these photographs of the game?
Oh, it was an iconic game, wasn't it? That one. I think that and the Kenny Dalglish one against the Kenny Dalglish goal against Spain are the ones that stick in my mind from that sort of era. I can remember watching that one on the telly. It must. That one was live on the telly, wasn't it?
Yeah. I remember that the first goal, as you can see that they've got their hands up, and I think that I don't know who it was playing them onside, but there was certainly a French player to the right hand side that was playing them onside.
They were both quite scrappy goals, weren't they?
Yeah.
It was absolutely chucking it, wasn't it? Absolutely chucking it.
That second goal was an absolute nightmare for the keeper. Yeah, probably killed the game for the French as well. So moving on, Irish misfire. So this is on the second page as well, but it's half a page, and it's a black and white photograph, so they don't even get the glory of colour in this one. Hungary versus the Republic of Ireland, and it was a 0-0 draw. And it shows Paul McGrath and Mick McCarthy try to keep out the Hungarian attack. In the Group 6, Spain head it with full points after 4 games. Hungary are on second, and 4 points after 3 games. Northern Ireland are on 3 points after 5 games. The Republic are on 2 points after 3 games, and bottom are Malta. Now Spain and the Republic would go on to qualify. I think that this was the one that we spoke about recently, wasn't it, Tom? I think the Republic won the last 4 games or something like that. They drew 2 and lost 1. I think the first 3. Is it? Yeah, that's what it's got there. So for them to be in that position after 3 games and still qualify was a great achievement. Okay, and moving on, we've got pages 30 and 31, and it's Shoot Mart, which is a bunch of adverts. So the first one, there's loads of little adverts and stuff here, and if there's any you want to pick out, then by all means, but I'm going to pick out Football Nuts. And it says 3-inch hand painted in club colours of your choice, mounted on a felt base. Any idea what the Football Nuts were? If not, I'll show. Do you want me to show you?
Go on then, you're dying to.
Those are the Football Nuts.
Oh.
So that it's like painted nuts with a football kit on.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's obvious what a football nut is when you think about it, isn't it? So the 2 that we've got here is one for Manchester United and one for Chelsea. They're on like a plinth.
That Nobby Styles on the left, is it?
It could well be. I don't know who that's going to be on the right. But yeah, it's basically like a peanut. It's not a real peanut, I'm guessing, but it's shaped like a peanut and maybe fashioned it might be a real peanut, I don't know. But got a football with his feet. It's pretty rubbish, really, if we're being honest, isn't it?
Have a flat football in it, to be fair.
Yeah. And how much was it? Did they say? Was it on there how much it was? Only £1.99. That's a bargain.
The boy that won the tenner could have had 5 of them.
So the next one, Harvey Lawler's Argyle Classics, and this is a unique collection of over 300 reports chronicling the most memorable moments in Plymouth Argyle's League and Cup history. Superbly illustrated hardback, 350 pages, £15, including postage and packing. I mean, I'm sure that is an absolute treasure trove for Plymouth Argyle fans.
It's a niche market, isn't it?
Yeah. 350 pages is quite significant as well. I think I did look. You can get them on eBay, so there's if any of you are quite taken by that.
So it's Harley Lawler. Is that a name you've come up with?
Harley Lawler. It doesn't. It's a difficult name to say, isn't it? Harley Lawler.
It is indeed.
You sound as if you're a wee bit drunk when you're saying it. Harley Lawler.
You would have thought there would have been better place putting an advert in the Plymouth paper, wouldn't you, rather than a national magazine? Eh?
Yeah, I don't know if there was any. Don't know if it says how much the adverts are. Please ring Bruce Sandell or Sandell. To advertise, please ring Bruce Sandell. Is there anything else you want to pick out from that? The ones I was looking at was the computer games.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, yeah.
Right, so this is great strategy games from E&J Software, including Treble Champions, European Champions, World Champions, Cricket Master and Test Master. Available for Spectrum 48 and 128, Commodore 64 and 128, and the Amstrad CPC Prices vary from £7.95 to £13.95 depending on the computer and whether it's a tape or a disc.
Another reason to curse my parents getting me a Dragon 32. Never had anything for a Dragon 32.
Did people really have those other than people who wanted to actually be an IT person?
Well, no, it was because my aunt was one of the first. She was a maths teacher that became. Maths teachers were converted to computer teachers back in there, as you'll remember. And she recommended to my mum that we get a Dragon 32, and then you couldn't get any games for the thing.
They didn't even go for a BBC Micro like any other teacher.
No, that would have been half. You could have seen the logic in that, couldn't you?
Well, anything about the games, Tom?
Well, I was looking at the other advert for computer games.
All right.
But it says Liverpool 48k, World Cup 1986 48k, and England's Glory 48k. So Liverpool was featuring a full 42-game league season, FA League and European Cups, team and tactics, selection, spying missions, etc. Both C64 versions and Atari Disc have 4 divisions: transfer market, income, expenditure, UEFA and Cup Winners' Cups if you qualify. Cassette 845, disc 1095.
I like the use of etc. in adverts. You know, it's like they just, just tell us, don't etc. me.
It's interesting. England's Glory play up to 3 friendly fixtures to refine your squad before the big test. Uses the same gameplay system as World Cup 1986. It's interesting. So you basically be sort of play 7 games or something like that.
Okay, so the other thing I wanted to point out was on the other page is this shoot news call. So it's basically club call, which
club call is a forerunner for club call. Yeah.
Well, actually, they call so you've got the news call, which is the main thing they're advertising, which is an overall. This is this football news, and then you've got the club call. So underneath it, you've got all the individual teams, and so you've got the main number. Then you've got dial 0898 121, and then the last 3 digits relating to your team. Now, looking at it, it includes Celtic, Dundee, Hearts, Hibs and Rangers. There's no Aberdeen or Dundee United in there, which was really a bit surprising. Calls charged at 38 pence a minute, peak times between 8 and 6 p.m, and 25 pence off peak. And again, let's compare this to 45 pence for the magazine. So you can either get the magazine and sit there reading it for hours on end, or you can go on the phone for a minute. It's up to you. That's if I was the parent in the house at that point, that would be what I would say to my child. It's up to you. A minute on the phone, or you can get the magazine.
I do remember thinking that club calls were felt really expensive at the time, and it was one of those that you daren't hold on for too long, otherwise you would get in trouble for it. But yeah, and a team had arrived when it had its own club call there. Yeah, that was big time.
Yeah, you quite often get them on the team photo as well. After a certain year, they started appearing on the team photo as well.
There was absolutely nothing when you phoned them up either. I mean, they were a total rip-off. There was nothing worth listening to.
Did we ever have a club call, Tom, at Clydebank?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Never had those.
Maybe one day,
Maybe. I tell you what, we're definitely we'd have more of that. But then again, most clubs do all sorts of levels. But yeah, we would have more of that sort of thing going on nowadays. Just things like taking, videos of the. I mean, that's the thing. It's like so many games of football that are just lost to memory in terms of having a video recording of it. Nowadays everything's recorded, everything's kept. You've got photographs of everything. You've got match reports of everything, and it just feels a wee bit a big bit of a shame for me anyway. Okay, so let's move on to page 32, and it's fan of the week, and this is Miss Mansfield. And in the spotlight is 21-year-old Melanie Brown, who's a Mansfield Town fan. Her mum says the club is her life. She's been supporting them since her dad took her along to a game at the age of 5. Melanie has only missed 1 game since, and even travels to most away games. She is a secretary at the supporters club and also sponsors a players kit. An accompanying photo shows Melanie in what looks like the club shop with player manager George Foster. It's a nice wee. So that's Fan of the Week in association with Trebor Extra Strong Mints. The next one we have is, yep, there we go. So this is a competition. 10 great Hummel tracksuits to be won. Get smart and shoot for this superb Hummel Yellowstone tracksuit as worn by Ali McCoist. Now, Ali's pictured sat down in a Hummel tracksuit. It's dark blue bottoms with a dark blue, white and yellow top. I quite like that. Ali was very much the darling of the media even back then. Now, in order to win one of the 10 tracksuits, you have to answer 3 questions about Ali. And one of them I'm going to give to you, Eric, and see if you know the answer to this one. But I'll let you. Well, it'll be the first one. With which Scottish club did Ali start his league career? Who could it be?
You're giving me the easy ones, aren't you? St Johnson, and he was a midfielder as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that actually. So
yeah. Started midfield.
The reason I remember Ali McCoist was we used to travel up for Easter holidays because my dad had family and that lived near Muirn Park actually, and we were thinking we would see Ali McCoist that Easter, but he moved to Sunderland before we got up. So yes, we never saw Ali McCoist play at Muirn Park.
Yeah. Okay, so the next question. In 1981, he signed for which well-known English club?
Sunderland.
Sunderland, yeah. And question 3, he's a prolific marksman for Rangers and scored either 21, 31 or 41 Premier League goals last season. This is league goals.
Sorry, I'd probably go in the middle.
Yep, 31. He actually scored 42 in total. And it's great. I'm actually like this. So, answers on a postcard. That's what they actually say. So, yeah, answers on a postcard. I do like that. So we're getting to the back end of the magazine, and we're at the start of an 8-page special looking at the Scottish Cup, 5th round. And Danny McLean takes a look at the upcoming Scottish Cup games after correctly predicting 7 out of 8 winners from the previous round. Now, the heading there is very Steve Clarke-ish. Bye bye Rangers, it says there. It says Gallagher can snatch it for United, says Danny McLean. So for Dundee United, as they take on Rangers, Danny says he goes for United, who were one of his tips for the final from the start. If United can keep Walters and McCoy quiet, he fancies their chances and sees the tremendous pace of Kevin Gallagher as the weapon on the side of United. Bank on Frank. So Celtic take on Hearts in the other game, and Danny goes for Celtic, who he reckons have enough to see off the Jambos thanks to Frank McAvenny's match-winning skills. He does reckon Paddy Bonner will need to keep John Robertson and John Colquhoun quiet though. On Alloa versus Hibs, Alloa versus Hibs, Danny salutes Alloa for the great achievement in getting this far, but doesn't see them getting past Hibs with so much quality in their side. He singles out Andy Gorham and Steve Archibald as 2 examples, and that's certainly a bit of quality there. And now the good news, Morton take on St Johnstone. So Danny's already incorrectly predicted that Morton would go out in 2 previous rounds. He's for them to go out again this time. So Danny backs up his choice of Saints to go through by saying, I've seen them 3 times this season and they strike me as one of the best footballing sides in the First Division. So Shoot then goes into each of the games in detail, but we'll just have a look at the Morton versus St Johnstone one, and pages 34 and 35. And Tottenham's Hotspurs can come of age, and it says the quarter-final tie is an all First Division affair. Saints boss Alec Totten says there could hardly be a greater incentive for Morton or ourselves. A place in the last 4 is an exciting prospect and there's everything to play for. I have a great deal of respect for Morton, and Capello is a difficult place to go at the best of times. But we have every right to be confident. We're one of the best sides in the First Division. I would fancy our chances against any team at this level. Now, St Johnstone have just been promoted from the Second Division and are about to move into their new £4.5 million stadium, which Totten claims is a mini Ibrox. Totten combines managing with a full-time job as a tyre company representative and assembled his squad for £65,000, with winger Steve Maskery being the biggest bargain, having cost just £6,000 from Queen of the South. And there's a photo at the bottom that shows Morton keeper Dave Wiley in an acrobatic action shot with the caption, Wiley hasn't conceded a goal in the competition. So before we have a wee chat about that, just a spoiler, Rangers would draw 2-2 with United before winning 1-0 in the replay. Celtic would beat Hearts 2-1. Hibs squeezed through with a 1-0 win over Alloa. Morton St Johnstone would draw 2-2, with Saints going through in the replay with a 3-2 win. So Danny got 3 out of 4 right. Rangers in the semi-finals met St Johnstone. It was a 0-0 followed by a 4-0 Rangers win at Celtic Park. And Celtic beat Hibs 3-1 at Hampden. And so Celtic and Rangers in the final. 1-0 to Celtic with Joe Miller scoring, which I'm guessing was the one from the throw-in that wasn't his throw-in. That's that one. Yeah. So, you remember much about this cup run, Eric?
I don't remember anything before the Morton game, but I remember the Morton game well, yes. Because first of all, Saints we're not long into the Jeff Brown era, so, you know, the real bad times were still fresh in the mind of St Johnstone fans, but Taunton had taken them up from the old, well, it would have been second division the year before with Ayr United, Ali McLeod's Ayr United. They were the two teams that came up, so he'd got things moving. And that season, I think the league table had showed you they kind of looked like they might get themselves into the promotion race, but, you know, tucked in the middle. But it kind of the emphasis quickly switched, or not quickly, but by that stage, it was all on the cup, really. That was the focus, because I think after they beat Morton, and then everything was around the semi-final, so the league results kind of just petered away type thing. But the big hype, there was big hype for the first. I mean, it got postponed, so I'm presuming it was waterlogged pitch. But the first game at Morton was postponed on the Saturday, and then so they played it midweek, and it was 2-2, as you say. I think Saints probably should have won it. I think they're 2-1 up, and against playing against 10 men from memory. But it went back to Muirton, and that's one of the. What was the last big game at Muirton Park? It was the last cup tie at Muirton Park, and it's very, very fondly remembered, because it's one of those old games where kickoff was delayed, I think, for 20 minutes, because it was this was probably the first game where you really realised that there was a real sort of fan base untapped that Taunton had kind of got back into. So I think the crowd was over 8,000 that night, whereas it was 6,000 at Morton. So that gives you a bit of an idea of, you know, just the sort of fan bases, the potential that was there. So from memory, Saints thoroughly deserved their win. I think they conceded one quite late to make the scoreline 3-2. But the big story in the build-up was John Spencer being on loan at Morton from Rangers. And, you know, nowadays, you know, short-term loans and all the rest of it, you know, it's nobody would bat an eyelid. But back then, it didn't really happen much, did it? You know, sort of the bigger teams putting out a player, and it all felt a wee bit wrong, you know. It was a bit of a ringer type thing, you know, pitching up on a Sunday morning when he shouldn't, you know, and he's signed for another club type thing. But as it turned out, Saints handled Spencer pretty well, and Maskery was the starter, and he was the star of that team. And it's a real, that end of the Muirton era, start of the McDermott era, it's a real nostalgia fest for St Johnstone fans. You know, obviously we talked about what they're living through just now, but people of my age and a wee bit older still have an incredible affection for that Taunton era when he took them up. And of course, next season they would go and get promoted in the first season of McDermott, playing in front of huge crowds now when you're talking about. I mean, St Johnstone will never get crowds like that again. Doesn't matter if they win another double next season. You know, I mean, they were averaging, you'd be getting 8,000 for a home game against Alloa and stuff like that. You know, it was a time and a place, really. And that was the sort of last of the part-time era. You know, they were part-time then, they were part-time the year they got promotion. And then after that, it flipped to full-time and things changed. But yeah, Taunton, I mean, it's funny how he was a car salesman, but I mean the guy was a salesman for the football club. He was just unbelievable for the gift of the gab, and just, you know, he would have the lines about, you know, he was always dropping in Shul Shankly stories, you know, from when he was at Liverpool, and Jock Wallace, Marble Staircase. He said there, mini Ibrox, you know. He was a guy that had St Johnstone fans eating out the palm of their hand. So yeah, that's that moment in time semi-final was huge. You know, they got a draw against Souness's peak Souness team, you know, at the part-timers at Celtic Park, and then lost in the replay. Steve Maskery wasn't fit for the first game, which was a huge thing. So who knows what might have happened if he'd been fit. But yeah, that was the day at Hillsborough as well. So it kind of gets sort of mixed feelings when St Johnstone fans look back on that one, because, you know, as soon as you get out, folk were hearing about what had happened down the road. But yeah, it was a huge few weeks for them, and then that Morton game was the last cup tie at Muirton, and then within a few weeks they were off.
So now we're talking about them, so let's move on to the back page. So let's straighten this up. There we go. So we've got the team photo of St Johnstone. So you want to talk us through this when we can have a wee chat about the bib strip as well, which is the bib strip's never worked for me. You know, whether it be St Mirren or any other team, but I actually think that's okay.
It's I think, yeah, Saints fans are nostalgic about that home kit, I would think, because I think, yeah, Saints was one of the better ones, wasn't it? There was a lot of them around. The Hamilton were as well, weren't they? You mentioned Clydebank. There was a good few, but there's some Saints legends in amongst that lot. And like, you go in the back road, Doug Barron, he got a testimonial top left. Then you got a couple other ones. I mean, Willie Waters was a bit of a cult hero. Probably Kilmarnock fans remember him just as affectionately, possibly even more so than St Johnstone fans. Then we've got Tommy Coyle, a man you know well, yep. Owen's big brother, and I did an interview with Owen a few months ago. I think it was in build up to the Saints Hibs Betfred semi. He remembers, and he's cut for Alec Taunton's cloth. You know, he still comes away with all the lines, and he said that when he became St Johnstone manager, he remembered Tommy's era and that game at Muirton and all that sort of spell. You know, Tommy Coyle had no pace, but he was a classy player. Back top right, you got Grant Jenkins when beards were beards, before Xander Clark's. There's a proper beard. He was a Pershire boy. Middle row, Paul Cherry was a bit of a club legend. Sammy Johnston, Alan Johnston's big brother, a classy midfielder with no pace, but he was the fans' favourite out of that team. Gary Thompson now passed away, unfortunately, I think. Stuart Sorby, a couple of boys I was at school with. Boy Davy Elder in the middle. He never became a first team player. You know, you got a couple, but he was a Perth boy. Then you're into guys in the middle that Kenny Thompson, another sort of seasoned veteran. Stevie Maskery, the star of it. Tommy Campbell, well known through going Forfar and all the rest of it. Don McVicker, another guy who died, unfortunately, but he was the captain of that team. And another boy I was at school with too, Scott McIntyre, another guy that didn't make it, but was, another local lad. So, it's a mixture. This team, not many of that team would have been in the promotion side. I'm thinking, 4 or 5 of them probably. That team started to break up the next season. And you got your, I don't know why... Am I not seeing it? Is Roddy's not in that, but Roddy Grant's not in that picture, is he?
No, I don't think so.
I see him there.
No.
I don't know why Roddy wouldn't have been in that team photo, but there you go. It's there's your guys like Alan Moore and that would come in the next season, but that was the end of the real sort of the ones that took them up from the second division to the first division, and then things picked up another level after that.
Anything about the team photo, Tom, that you want to pick out?
Interesting, like you were saying there about the old style beers, but there's some sort of old school looking footballers there with the short hair and the moustaches, and then you've got a few wee spiky blonde highlights and there's young fresh faced kids in there as well. There's a real sort of mix of your hardened footballers and
I think it showed you that at that stage that there wasn't. That's everybody apart. I mentioned Roddy, but the kids are in there as well. You know, so it was not a big squad by any stretch of the imagination, and they all get. I don't know. It's funny, some of them get their full name, Stephen Maskery, but then you've got Tom Coyle, and I don't know anybody that knew him as Tom Coyle, but and Samuel Johnson. But
I just think it's interesting with the away, because the away's red with a white bib, so they both get a white bib. I just think that's interesting because both strips have got that sort of predominantly on the chest the same colour.
And the red and white now, that was, they had one sort of red and white stripe change kit when they got, not long after they got promoted. You can picture your Sergei Baltaches and that, but it's not a change kit that's traditional to Saints, or that's kind of they've gone back to in recent years.
Is it strange because I've just noticed that I just thought they were like the same kit but different colours, but the collar and cuffs.
No, the collar's different. Yeah,
it's a different style, and I mean the one with, because the blue stripe on the collar is right on the edge, isn't it? Whereas with the red one, it's down the middle of the collar. Yeah, that's very strange. And the goalkeeper's kits were rubbish back then.
The match winner ones were awful, weren't they?
Yeah,
they're like a blurry telly, aren't they? Horrendous.
Yeah.
But that's a classic for me. That is the classic Scottish football. I don't know about you guys.
The Mitre Delta.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The English one was red, wasn't it? It was identical but red. But no, I remember there was a kind of, I wouldn't say an iconic photo, but of that, it probably would have been around the same time for the photo. It would have been just after, because before in the match programme of the semi-final, you had a picture of Don McVicker, the captain, in the middle, and they'd obviously done it at training, and he was bent, he was kneeling down, and his tracksuit bottoms had a big hole in the knee, and I think that summed up that sort of era and the sort of no frills about it. But I mean, Muirton Park was falling apart by that stage, you know.
I love that. I can think of possibly there's a photograph. No, it was John Brownlee, I think, in a Scotland kit, kneeling down, and he's got a pair of football boots on, Adidas, and the white bits of like sort of the stitchings come off, so that
peeling off a bit.
You know, and it's like that's because that's what it used to be. You wouldn't get 2 or 3 new pairs of boots a season. That would do you about 3 years or something. You know, until they literally fell apart. Yeah, you know, it's like you would have the tongue would be separate from the boot, and you'd have to keep putting it in, and that's just the way it was. So, but that's I like that sort of thing. Absolutely.
And Eric, is the famous grouse an iconic sponsor?
Yeah, I would say so. It's it lasted into the top flight. I'm trying to think. Did they go elsewhere and then Famous Grouse came back? But yeah, they certainly. I think they might have. They switched to, because the promotion, there was Low and Bonner, which was, I don't know if it was Fabrics or what. Anyway, I think it was a Dundee company. But Famous Grouse came back. I'm sure there was a break and then it came back. Yeah, Famous Grouse.
It does look quite smart. It's sponsors on Kits Go.
Yeah, and the bib helps that. Like we went back in the Brentford thing, don't we? I think the sponsors would be happy with that.
Yeah, I did probably a few years ago a bit of
retro sponsors.
Yeah, retro sponsors. So I put the iconic sponsors of a team on an old football photo. So I did one of John Connolly at St Johnstone with, you know, just the blue kit, white collar, but I put the Famous Grouse sponsor over it, and it's amazing how many of them just looked right, and it just made the kits suddenly seem of this era, you know.
I think because the Famous Grouse, because it's a local whiskey, you know, that was, and from memory, I think the next time it was on the kit in the Premier, like I say, somebody will correct me if there wasn't a break. I'm sure there was a break. It was curved, so if you could picture like a John Ingalls or somebody, and it was like a baggier shirt. It was a Buckter shirt, you know the one I mean?
Yeah.
With a collar. And the Famous Grouse was on a curve rather than written straight. I mean, it's a long one to get in, to be fair, you know.
Yeah.
You need that Brentford centre half really to do it justice, don't you?
Yeah, they probably want a bigger font, Famous Grouse, aren't they? So we're paying for the font size. Come on.
Yes.
I think actually the one I did in John Connolly, that in my memory, I think that was a curved one. So yeah, that's probably from that sort of era strip as well. Okay, so we've got to the end of the magazine. Thank you for doing that, Eric. Just to catch up, so what's going on with you at the moment? What's going on with your life, with your work? Anything you want to tell us about?
Just had a week off, so I needed it after all those. I mean, never going to complain about all the cup finals and the cup semi-finals and all the rest of it with Saints. So, but it did drag on. So I'll be coming back to cover the Euros. So I'm accredited for the 3 group games. So we'll see how that goes, and then it'll be Saints in Europe.
Yeah.
So busy.
That's brilliant. Yeah, hopefully, I'm guessing you'll be going out to cover them as well, if possible.
Touch wood. I mean, they're guaranteed. I mean, it changes all the time, but I think the latest is they're guaranteed two ties. If they lose their Europa League qualifier. If they win that, they go into the Europa League playoff by that, and then if they lost that, they would be guaranteed group stage of the new Conference League. And if they lose their first game this Europa League qualifier, they'd get another shot at getting into the Europa Conference League. So I think they're guaranteed 2 rounds of European football, and they go in a bit later as well. I think it's August that they get going again, which is a bit more civilised.
No, listen, thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you again.
Enjoyed that, guys.
Tom, thank you as always for being Tom.
Thanks, Andy.
And until the next time, let's shoot the breeze.